Enshrouded is really good. While still being in development, it recently released early access and is already impressive. After playing through the bulk of the game over the span of 50 hours, it really feels like a streamlined version of Valheim, one that respects the player's time a bit more than its predecessor, at least for the most part. On the surface, Enshrouded and Valheim appear to be a very similar experience. Crafting, exploring, fighting, farming. It's a solid gameplay loop. The differences stem from how each of these aspects are executed. With crafting and Enshrouded, you'll still be required to find specific resources in the world in order to make armor, weapons, and building materials, but unlike Valheim, you're not looking at hours of mining iron ore to make the best pickaxe. In Enshrouded, gathering the resources you need, especially when it comes to mining ore, is something that will more often than not only take a few minutes of your time. The same applies to farming, where you can take something like 1 flax and manufacture 10 flax seedlings, which once planted will then grow into 10 flax within 15 minutes or so. Most farmable items are like that, offering either a 10-to-1 or 5-to-1 seedling to plant ratio for any given plant. In essence, you are rewarded for exploring the world and finding a small amount of multiple and abundant resources without the tedium and monotony of farming for extensive amounts of a single resource for hours on end. Enshrouded respects your time while incentivizing you to keep playing by avoiding unnecessary restrictions. Need to craft something? Finding all of the resources will take 5 minutes. Need to farm something specific? You can grow all you'll ever need within an hour. Want to fast travel with a ton of ore? No problem. And you can even make your own fast travel points wherever you want, although they are in limited number. After reaching the current max level of 25 and reflecting upon my build, having invested fairly evenly in each of the major skill trees, I have to say that the game is fairly well balanced. Starting off with a warrior melee build, then changing it up to an archer ranger, and finally landing on an intelligent wizard, I never felt like I made a bad choice in my skill point allotments and never needed to respec. And that's not to say that some skills are better than others, but in general, it's even enough that you can either focus extensively on a few parts of the skill tree or several, and neither approach will negatively impact your experience. As you explore the map, you'll do so in a clockwise direction. Each new region you explore will have its own set of resources, and the same applies to the shrouded areas as well. While flame altars are limited, there are 3 locations that I kept going back to again and again, as they were in close proximity to an array of useful resources. First off was here in the Revel Woods. While the tower is nearby, the raised terrain makes it annoying to glide over here, but it's a good spot for clay and flax, plus the copper mine is 1 minute away. The second altar I placed was here, to the east of Pikes Peak, in the northern area of the map, right by this tin mine. This is great not only for tin, but for a small shrouded area right next to it. There are shroud plants you'll need here, and a red mushroom enemy you'll need for leather and potions. If you need multiple resources here, just gather what you can and log out. When you return to the game, all the resources will be reset. The third altar I placed was here, north of Brittlebush, above the temple in the desert. This one will get you close to valuable desert resources like sulfur, lapis lazuli, sand, and sandstone, but it also makes for a good nexus for exploration in this area as well. The journey to the tower here is excessively long, and be sure to bring an altar with you once you reach the desert, as there's no stone to be found in order to craft one. When it comes to farming, prioritize flax as soon as you find it in the Revel Woods. Given you can generate 10 seedlings from 1 flax, the earlier you start planting them, the better. In order to craft the best endgame armor, you're going to need over 200 flax per set, so don't slouch on this one as it's bound to be the thing you'll farm the most. As mentioned earlier, quitting back to the main menu will reset resources, but it'll also save you from imminent death or whenever you want to re-roll a legendary chest. Whether you're stuck in the shroud with only a few seconds left on the clock, or gliding headfirst into lava, your salvation is only a logout away. If you're an archer, you'll need a ton of twigs to craft arrows on a consistent basis, and while growing tons of shrubs at your home base seems reasonable at first, it's actually much easier to mine twigs from animal nests. Anytime you come across one of these structures, bust out the pickaxe and get a few hundred twigs in no time. While bronze is the most tedious resource in the game to craft, given its dual dependency on both tin and copper, you can shortcut the need to craft bars by repeatedly farming such resources in tower puzzle rooms. One such place to try your luck is the tower in the Nomad Highlands. Destroy every vase you come across throughout all 3 levels of the puzzle room, and you're bound to find at least a few bars of tin and copper. If you're really lucky, you might even find bronze bars as well. As far as skills are concerned, the wizard has some of the absolute best. You can regenerate HP based on your intelligence level per second. You can also boost the staff's charge time and boost the damage of fire magic, which pairs nicely with the Eternal Fireball. After playing as an archer for most of the game, I ended up ditching my bow for the Eternal Fireball and stopped my need to farm animal nests for twigs every half an hour or so. If only we could make arrows from logs instead of twigs, being an archer will require a lot less tedious crafting. Also, the best staff in the game can be consistently found in this chest in the southeast corner of the map, giving eternal spells a huge advantage over any continued pursuit of archery. Also, don't sleep on these basic skills, which will help any build out in general, along with the double jump, teleport dash, and glide boost skill to really help you reach those faraway places. While you can craft some of the best endgame armor through extensive FLAX manufacturing, you can also find killer armor sets and legendary weapons through specific chests found in the desert section of the game. In particular, you can find the best weapons and armor at this chest here. Just place an altar and make sure its range ends just before the chest, and then you can loot it, log out again, and continue to farm the chest indefinitely. Even for only being early access, Enshrouded is two major ways far and above its contemporaries. The massive handcrafted world is much more immersive than procedurally generated ones in games like Valheim. While a procedurally generated world is a cool gimmick, as you have a completely unique world unto yourself, it also poses problems with biome placement, meaning that you may end up needing resources that require hours of exploration to reach. If you value exploration over crafting, that's fine, but if you're more interested in making that next useful item, then learning exactly where all resources to craft it make harvesting those resources a very simple task. And seeing as how all resources regenerate after a server restart, exploration is then extremely rewarding, as you only need to memorize a small number of resource areas per biome for you to farm indefinitely. The building abilities in this game are incredible because they give you per voxel precision. There's no limit to how tall a structure can be or anything like there was in Valheim, and having the ability to change the look of any voxel you want is as good as it can possibly get. The only limits are your own creativity, making building an activity you can do for hours, if not endlessly. Just take a look at some of these impressive builds posted on the subreddit. So in what areas could Enshrouded be improved upon? Well, for starters, melee combat could use some more dynamics, like being able to do heavy attacks and more combos, which would help make it feel less repetitive. Combat isn't bad per se, and it's generally challenging the more you explore, but there needs to be something to make it more engaging over the long term. Archery is kind of broken in the arrow crafting department. The dependency on twigs grows exponentially the further you get into the game, largely because enemies become more resilient to basic arrows and because crafting heavy-duty arrows requires a ton of resources. It also doesn't help that the multi-arrow perk costs additional arrows every time it procs, which is constantly. If the multi-arrow perk didn't cost 1 or 2 additional arrows, and you could craft arrows from wood logs instead of only from twigs, it'd be a lot more manageable. The other problem stems from eternal spells, as having an eternal fireball makes archery obsolete, so the notion of eternal arrows or an eternal quiver should be there to compensate. The amount of flax you need to craft the endgame armor is kind of insane. While it's fine to have the spinning wheel craft linen at a 1-to-1 ratio with flax, you shouldn't need over 200 flax to craft an armor set. Legendary chest farming for the best armor and weapons is also annoying, given there should really be quests to obtain these items, or at least the blueprints for these items, but instead currently the only way to obtain the best gear is to continually re-roll these legendary chests over and over and over again for hours, and it just isn't fun. Speaking of legendary weapons, why can't the blacksmith craft them? I feel like the blacksmith is underutilized in general, as he only offers a small number of craftable weapons that I never wanted, and there's no way to level a weapon you enjoyed early game to then match your current level. All of the other NPCs seem to have much more useful offerings, and I hope the blacksmith gets some new abilities down the line. While Enshrouded could certainly use some more quality of life improvements, and improvements to certain areas in particular, it still offers around 50 plus hours of enjoyable gameplay for a current price of $30. Considering the devs are planning to expand the map to be anywhere from 2 to 3 times the current size in the future, the scale will be massive whenever it finally releases. Even in its current state of early access, Enshrouded is a more streamlined, more casual version of Valheim that's a great time even for solo players. If you're looking for a new casual action RPG with the best building system around, featuring some optional survival aspects, then Enshrouded will absolutely be your new obsession. I'm going to give the early access version of Enshrouded an 8 out of 10, as there's still a lot more to come down the line for this game, but there's no doubt that this game will be near perfect in the next 6 to 12 months. What'd you think of Enshrouded, and do you have any additional tips? If so, share them down below and help anyone else who's looking for a leg up in the game. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Life itself is only a vision, a dream. Nothing exists save empty space and you. And you are but a